We are considered a state agency. We are tax exempt, but we do not collect any taxes. And our mission, what we are tasked to do as a state agency is to maximize our regional economic prosperity through maritime. And so we are tasked with doing that here in our 3-parish jurisdiction, but also for the state of Louisiana. And we are considered a diverse landlord port because we have 4 lines of business. And so our first line of business is cargo. So like you see here, the containerized cargo. We also have break bulk cargo, the rail with the New Orleans Public Belt Railroad, in real estate because we are a landlord port. So we have tenants that lease property and infrastructure from us and then go and run their own operations. And cruise, which is back and running after a long year and a half with COVID. And so, like I mentioned, with our mandate of maximizing that economic impact, the real way that we see that we help to do that for our state is through jobs. So within that 3-parish jurisdiction that I mentioned, there are over 19,000 jobs that are created because of the work that is done through the Port of New Orleans with our regional maritime industry. And then you can see here how that number kind of increases from the state to 21,000, and then as we go nationally to 119,000. So here you are today at our LIT, as we are calling it, Community Connection Office. So LIT is the Louisiana International Terminal. I'm sure some of you have heard of it. But this is the first draft rendering of the site. And so, and actually I'm at Melissa, I don't think you can see it, but I will tilt it a little bit this way. And so this is a rough cut. This will change as time progresses, but this terminal, we are looking at potentially having an opening of July 2027. And this is to meet the growing demand of the maritime industry as we move towards more cargo being shipped in containers. And so containerization is a more efficient way to move cargo, and now that people, especially during the pandemic, they're used to 2-day shipping with Amazon and having your package here, and how does that get to you ultimately? You know, it's not coming directly from Amazon, it's probably coming through a port, then getting on a truck, and then getting to your doorstep. And so this is the rendering of LIT, and then from a timeline perspective, we have this year submitted our permit application to the Army Corps of Engineers. So we did that in July. We are currently waiting for the Army Corps to deem that application complete. Once that is completed, that will then trigger a 2 to 3 year process where the Army Corps and a third-party contractor are going to conduct a number of studies to address questions about things like drainage, economic impact, you know, engineering and design. And so that rendering that I showed you when I said that's the first draft, that will be updated and continue to change as this 2 to 3 year process moves forward with the Army Corps. And so once the Army Corps grants us a permit at the end of that 2 to 3 year phase, then that would signal us to be able to start construction, which we would anticipate in 2025. And so we would envision phase 1, which is 1 berth or 1 wharf, being open in mid-2027. And one of the real benefits, you know, when we talk about LIT and we talk about this project and what it can mean for not only the Violet and St. Bernard community, but the region and state as a whole, is when we look at job impact and job benefits and thinking of generations. You know, I have 2 daughters, they're 18 months, I'm a St. Bernard resident. I think about opportunities here for them as they grow older. And so when we look at the job numbers, this came from an economic impact study that we did in the spring. At opening of LIT, we would anticipate 600 direct jobs in St. Bernard. And you can see how some of these jobs are manufacturing, rail, water, truck, warehouse and storage, and so forth. And this kind of shows you an example this list of some of the types of jobs that are created by terminal activity. And on one of the handouts that you all have kind of gives you an overview of the different types of jobs that are available through maritime, and that's not just through this project. The Port of New Orleans, we have existing operations at our uptown facilities, and so the types of jobs that you see on that list, some of the jobs that you might hear about in the community, that is all currently available at our operations. You don't necessarily have to wait until 2027. But we do want to get local folks trained and into those jobs as soon as possible. And so today we're going to be focusing on trucking. And here's the handout that you all have that gives the overview of careers. And as we move forward through our outreach process, I work in our community engagement division, so we have career info sessions like this all the time. We kind of paused them during COVID, and so each one we kind of try and take a different focus of different types of careers in the industry. And so Brian, he's going to present a little later. He's from Nunez, and he's been to some of our former sessions, and so we do these frequently. And so if you're here to learn about trucking, or if you are a trucker and you're here, thanks for coming. We're going to be having more of these with different types of categories, so we always encourage you guys to help us spread the word. And last thing I'm going to say before we dive into our panel is I just wanted to give a brief overview of the TWIC card. One of the top questions I get at these career info sessions is about TWIC and how do I get it, and the details around it. So on everyone's chair you have a copy that is directly from the TSA website that gives you an overview of the TWIC card process, the requirements needed to get one, and all folks that access our terminal are required to have a TWIC card. So same as you would go to an airport, ports are secure facilities. And so to help maintain that security, everyone that goes in and out of the terminal needs to have that identification. And that stands for, Transportation Worker Identification Card. Credential. Thanks, Emily. Okay, so with that being said, any questions on that so far? Okay, great.
I got a question.
Sure,
With the TWIC card, there was a place up there off of Chapatulas. I've heard that it's closed. Is that true?
Identigo? I think it's still open.
Still
Still
open.
open. Right next door to Pizza Hut.
It's still open.
Right next door to
Oh
Pizza
yeah,
Hut.
Laura just got her TWIC card. So,
Okay, we have it there, and you also have it on the West Bank as well. There's a place you can go.
and on TSA.gov, they have a list of places where you can go and get your TWIC card. But probably the one that's closest to us is the one that Brian mentioned on the West Bank, and then the one on Rousseau Street, which is right off of Chapatulas. And so now we're going to dive right into our panel, and I'm going to go have a seat so I can help moderate. So with that being said, I wanted to let the panelists have an opportunity to introduce themselves. We have three panelists today: David Kearney from Kearney Companies, Daryl Williams from D3 Trucking, and Melissa Creasy from 5 Star Transport. So thank you all for being here. And it's interesting because as we started and before we were getting ready, I heard you all talk about the need for truck drivers. And so, I definitely think the information that you all shared today will be valuable. And this is an informal conversation. And so we are recording the session for those that couldn't attend. So if you know folks that wanted to be here that couldn't make it, you can share their info with me after, and we'll make sure that we get them a copy of this video. But David, why don't you just go ahead and start us off and tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been in the industry, and your company.
Okay. David Kearney, thank all of y'all for being here. I'm president and owner of the Kearney Companies. We've been in the industry as a family for 5 generations. It was originally stevedoring. Our family somehow started working on the docks 5 generations ago, and we've never stopped working on the docks for some strange reason. My dad calls it a genetic defect, but it is what it is, and it's kind of an industry that we're just is in our DNA, I guess. So our company here is what we call a third-party logistics company, and what that means is we are the representatives in New Orleans for companies like Georgia Pacific or International Paper. It might be Riceland Foods. They're shippers, they control the freight, but they hire us here locally to manage their freight. So we have warehouses that we rent from the Port of New Orleans, we pay them rent. And then we bring in rail cars on the public belt railroad that the port owns. And we unload the rail cars, put it in the warehouse, and then load containers that the customer decides which steamship line they're gonna use depending on where in the world that product's gonna go. And the last piece of our job, really, besides handling the cargo, is arranging the trucking from the port with the empty container to our facility, load it, and then bring that loaded container back to the port in time for the vessel that it's gonna depart on. And as such, we have our own trucks that we buy and purchase or lease from like Ryder, who's a truck leasing company. And we pay for the truck and the fuel and the insurance, and then we hire what's called a company driver. So you're probably gonna hear there's different models here. But at the same time, we, besides hiring our own company driver, who's a full-time employee, we also hire other trucking companies to help us, and both of those companies are here. We work with Park Intermodal quite a bit, and then we started working with 5 Star, Melissa's company, also. So I think what you'll find in the port business, as much as you could say, well, we're competitors, we all work together. My competitor really is Savannah or Mobile or Houston. It's not just Park Intermodal or 5 Star. We're a community. We work together as a community. We will succeed as a community only if the port remains efficient. And one of the big efficiency factors right now in all the ports is the trucking. There is a shortage of drivers, and I would say right now we're really struggling to expand because we're not getting enough trucks every day. And part of that is filling the trucks that we have already, the company vehicles, but also getting enough drivers from our partner carriers, which would be the 2 folks sitting here. So you can see how it all kind of works together. But it's a quick 2 cents.
All right, my name is Daryl Williams. I'm with D3 Trucking. I'm the newbie in the game, so I probably was in it maybe 9-10 years right now. What I do is I have trucks. So I work for, like Dave, we pull a lot of their freight. We do a lot of rice moves and stuff like that. I mean, like he said, he touched on a lot of stuff. We have a real shortage on trucks. It's hard to get drivers, you know, and I feel that if we can work together to put something together to bring to Shellman, it can really be something major for generations and generations to come. You know, your family, your kids, they can have careers. And that's just a brief about me in the trucking industry.
Hi, I'm Melissa Creasy. I've been in the industry for a little bit over 30 years. I'm not going to give my age, but maybe 32 years fresh out of high school. And I own and open 5 Star. It's a trucking agency for owner-operators, although we're also expanding and trying to get our own trucks and get company drivers. But we do containerized freight out of the Port of New Orleans and the rails. That's what we specialize in. And like everyone's saying, we need drivers, and that is the future. And if anyone's looking into it, you can make lots of money. And I've been in it for 32 years, and I have never seen them make the money they're making now. And it makes me so happy to seriously see these guys making it. And the sky's the limit. I think it's coming. I really do.
All right, well, thank y'all. So let's talk a little bit about the different categories of trucking. Because I know, Melissa, you mentioned moving a containerized freight cargo and out of the port. But I know that there's, also you mentioned grain and rice. So can y'all talk a little bit about that? Does anyone want to start off with the different types of trucking there is?
There's just so many. I mean, there's divisions for vans, flatbeds, heavy hauling. There's people who haul Bud Light, the domestic carriers, so they can go in any direction, but we do specialize in the containers, and it's a wonderful life for them because they can do, the daily trips, or they can choose to go long. So.
And have you seen an increase in containerized?
Oh, it's booming. It's never been. It's incredible to see, but we need the drivers. It seems like it's tripled. I don't have the figures. I wish I did, but we were going from having a dispatch set for maybe 3 days. A couple weeks ago, we were seriously telling customers it's a 3-week wait, and I've never seen that in New Orleans. And it's just heavy volumes. Someone's coming over here, and the drivers are needed more than ever. So.
Anything you want to add?
I was going to say the categories within the container drayage space. So the word drayage, if you hear that term, that's related to containers normally, but it's the same thing. It's you would call it in the domestic industry a truck move. In the container industry, for some reason, we call it a dray move. But you can, as a trucker, if you're hauling containers, you're called a drayman, and essentially within that category, you can go over the road, where you're hauling a container from the port to maybe a distribution center that's in Memphis or Jackson, or it's going to be regional, or you might be going to a plant that pick up a cargo from the plant, or there's a lot of local work, and that's the other aspect of it, is you could do moves just to and from, like our warehouse, like a lot of Darrell's drivers are doing, and they might run 5 round trips a day, but then at 3:30 they go home. And so there's different strokes for different folks. I think as life changes and you go from wanting a local be at home job, you can also do the over the road stuff too. So just putting that out there, because the pay structures are different, but at the end of the day, I think it all comes to the same wage level. And as a professional truck driver, that's what I like to think of the drivers as, a professional truck driver, because they've chosen a career in truck driving. You're paid as a professional. It's not like you're just some transient worker. You're really paid as a professional truck driver. And Melissa hit on it. The wages for professional truck drivers are at an all-time high. There's no debate about it. And so I think some of us in the business worried that as wages went up, could we raise our prices to the industry, or would we start to raise prices and see volumes come off? I would say we've been able to maintain our profitability as a company, even though we are paying more, and that's a good, healthy sign. So I think the feeling I get is that this is a very healthy time to be in that line of work as a professional.
So you think the opportunity of local versus cross the road is equally as?
It should pay about the same thing. Yeah, I think so. I mean, you do more over the road. I'm just local.
I don't know. I get a little different. Some of my road drivers do a lot more. They could go maybe another 1,500 more a week.
Is there a region that this takes place, or this is across the country?
Across the country. It just might be if you're in California, you're having to drive, to Chicago. Here it's more regional, a little shorter. Probably what, 300 to 500 miles? I would say 400 or 500 mile radius.
We go to Nashville.
So you're out though. If you're an over-the-road driver and you're out 4 nights a week,
you can make a lot of money. But you don't have to. We have the overachievers. The road drivers will make considerably. I would say from 15 to 2,000 more. But you're not away at home. But you can,
If you're not at home, you're not spending money.
Right.
But you know, and to y'all's point, you talked about kind of the difference between the two, but we also have an opportunity from our location, right, of that regional perspective, where if you wanted to be home at the end of the day, you know, you could do your trips and then be home with your family, right?
Yes.
And have a wonderful living and work Monday through Friday, and the early bird catches most worms. Yeah, we have drivers, but that's the thing with being a driver and the flexibility that they have. That you, in most of the cases, if you're an owner operator, and some companies, you can have flexible schedules. So if you do have a family and you need to be off to pick up kids or whatever situation, there's so much flexibility because of the need, and people will be willing to work with you. So.
Awesome.
I heard Mr. Kearney say a company driver. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what you mean by a company driver?
I was just thinking through that. So the neat thing about the trucking industry is, as a professional driver, that means you have your CDL and you have some experience driving a truck. Once you're approved by any of our insurance carriers, you can own your own truck, and if you own your own truck, you can hire on as an owner operator, and that's probably the most independent version, because you own your truck, you've agreed to work for a company, but you're...
I think that's with dump trucks also. So I think you need a Class B to do, you know, to deal with dump trucks and stuff.
The premiums in the Class A license, that's where the demand is, definitely. And I was just thinking, a lot of what we haul is, it's obviously in containers, and so the wheels of the container, which a chassis, you know, those are all really maintained by the steamship lines and the terminals, and so you're getting to haul someone else's asset. So you're not have to worry about the trailer that you're hauling, the maintenance necessarily on the trailer. You're just worried about the cab and what's happening if you're an owner operator. Not to say that there's not some headaches that come with the container and the wheels, but generally that's not the real area of concern. So we have to have a certain license to pick up containers, and that's governed by a universal body called UIIA. It's a universal intermodal interchange agreement. But as a trucking company that has either owner operators or company drivers, we have to take care of all that. And that's the thing that's good that you don't have to worry about as a driver. It's a real kind of tedious thing to get certified and approved for. But once you're approved, then you can pick up and interchange equipment. You can all your drivers can enter the terminals. The other thing that we're having to do as the company, whether we're company drivers or owner operators or whatever, is do all the dispatching. So to get in and out of the port, there's an appointment process that has to be made. Our dispatchers go into the computer, they know what truck number you're in, and you have a RFID tag up in your windshield. They're going to make an appointment, and so as a driver, when you arrive to the terminal, there's an automated system that knows you're there, and it's already telling the guy in the top loader which container to grab, because in 10 minutes you're going to be pulling up. There's an incredible amount of technology that goes into the container terminal. Nobody even thinks about it, but it's amazing. And with that, all the dispatching falls on the companies represented here. So one of our key personnel positions that we have is a dispatcher. So in addition to truck drivers, you have dispatchers, you have folks that work on safety, risk management. Safety is a huge deal. We spend a lot of time working on and worrying about safety. And that's incumbent on a driver as well. So your job, part of it is driving the truck, but the other part of it is being safe. So just something to think about.
So I want to circle back. So a lot of you all have talked about pay and, you know, how it's at an all-time high. So can you guys give us an idea, what are some of the incentives to being a truck driver? You know, I know every company might being a shortage right now, I mean, what is the value for someone who might be considering getting into the trucking industry?
Well, they're so needed, and they have the flexibility to pick and choose, but the money's there, and I missed the question because y'all make me laugh.
What are the incentives to
Oh,
be a truck driver?
they really do. They get to, I texted a couple of my drivers to really find out from them yesterday, well, how do they feel? And honestly, it was the flexibility. You really can, if you don't feel like dealing with the port or going to not necessarily port, because we love the port, okay? But if you don't want to go and do city work one day and do that, you can go to Mobile, or you can go to, on the other side, Alexandria, Shreveport, whatever. You can pick and choose what you do and what your hours are and how much you make. Not everybody wants to be on the road and, work, and be away from home. Some people have to be at home, but you can make a wonderful living being working just your 5 days and show up every day early and do the 5 days. You can make an incredible living. So and it's only going up. The rates are just going up. If I was 20 years ago, I'd get a CDL and it'd be really, it's wonderful. It's the future, and with the shortages that we have, I would encourage everyone to know people in high school. It is the future. I mean, back in the 80s, I saw it. I mean, it's been dwindling, but now it's a shortage. But now is the time to get in because it's only getting better. So.
And could you all give us an idea of what your average salary? I know it kind of ebbs and flows, but what would be an average weekly take-home pay, for example, for a truck driver? Kind of varies.
Well, it depends on, you see everything, being an owner-operator, and I have a couple of them that are DJs and they don't work every day. So you have a driver that might work 3 days and you might have one that works 5. But if you do the 5 and after fuel, and I can only speak for owner-operator side because this is not a company driver, it's you owning your own truck. But we're seeing after fuel, they should be at least at 18 to at least 3,500 a week. I have seen 4,000. That's those drivers that are driving to Memphis. Those are the ones that are going to Birmingham. But you can bring home to after fuel, this is not at least 2,000 a week as an owner-operator minimum, with a high of about 33. I had one this past week after fuel, after deductions. It was like $3,400, and he just did mostly locals, and I think one Mobile. So
That was a week.
And then you think from that driver's got to have some maintenance with the truck.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Associated truck costs. So I would say on my end, which is the company driver, the take home would be roughly half, but you have no maintenance costs with truck
And
expense. Right. So it's funny how it works. Well, almost. They do have benefits because they're not self-employed. They become, so they have healthcare, 401k, PTO, so paid time off. So when they are off, they're still getting paid versus a 1099 where when you take off,
you work, you don't get paid.
So, and again, it's that flexibility that Melissa mentioned that I think draws people to the industry. When you're working, I saw the question here. It said, "What's a day for a truck driver typically look like?" I'd say it's probably a 6:30 or 7 o'clock start at where you start making your first move, and then if you're local, you're pretty much done by 3:30, 4 o'clock. And so that's if you're a coach or if you have kids, if you do stuff in church or whatever, it gives you that flexibility. If you're an over-the-road driver, it would be a lot different, your schedule, but I'm sure less demanding in the sense that you don't have to make as many city moves as Melissa calls it. I think that's a good way to put it. The city moves can be more traffic, more stress, I would say, just because of the traffic.
And you never know. Some days are better than others.
Yeah.
They really are.
If you want to listen to WWL all day, truck truck's a good place to be.
Yeah.
Keep up on the Saints, right?
Trucking authority, your number on qualification, when is that needed?
That's
Owner operator.
well, the owner operator, I don't think has to have your own operating authority. It's really the trucking company that. So that's the other thing we have to deal with is DOT and to get an operating authority. It's interesting how they set up the trucking industry in that regard. The operating authority and DOT number go to the company, not the owner operator or the driver. Right? If you're an owner operator and you own your truck, you're gonna have a placard on the side of your truck that will say like Park and Portal, and it will have his operating authority and DOT number.
Yes.
You
Right.
could get your own authority,
Right.
it's a process, but
So like, even if like, if you leased on to my company, I'm gonna be responsible for the insurance. I think the only thing you would have to cover about it if you want to book me off about it. So, we pretty much would cover everything I would use to get a ticket, that'd be on the company.
So that's the responsibility of the company with the actual authority.
Right. And then a DOT audit
Right.
happens every so often. That goes to the company, not the driver. But if you had your own, I've seen this before. I've seen a guy driving his own truck, but he had his own authority, and had other drivers. He was trying to dispatch from his cab, and that's in this day and age, would be crazy. Like I wouldn't recommend doing that. It's the dispatching piece is so challenging. That's where the goal of the dispatcher is to keep the drivers constantly busy. And so when you sign on with a company as an owner operator or a company driver, part of your success is really how good is that dispatcher, or how good is that company, or customers do those companies have. Because if the company has seasonal work or the customer base isn't that strong, then the volume's going to do this. So you're not always going to have movers. And I'd say when you're looking at working for a trucking company, you want to ask, how's the dispatcher? What type of customers do you have? Are you moving chemicals or grain, or is it hazardous cargo? Things like that. Because one of the things we bring is three different trucking companies is consistent volume. What does that mean for the drivers? Consistent paycheck. There's a lot less of this. Right now, though, in this business, no one is seeing this. It's just like this. It's that busy. We don't move every week. It just keeps piling up. So, yeah, it is. But as drivers, our job is to make it as easy and safe for you guys to take the decision making out of the cab, and you're really focused on your job as a professional driver, and that's operating that truck safely and efficiently. I think the trucks these days are better than ever in terms of technology. The ones we have all have collision avoidance, all the bells and whistles you see in a car. That's all made its way into the truck cab now.
Is there a certain year of truck that an owner operator would need?
Well, for me, for insurance, we have a low to go high. So we pretty much trying to get out of the older trucks, bring the new trucks out and have the technology to be which is something that it's for the time on the driver. So a driver couldn't drive 23 hours because they're trying to make money. They only can drive a certain amount of time.
Shut down.
Yeah, after a certain time, after so many hours, they have to take a 10-hour break.
we really don't have a age on our trucks. I think we can go up to, I think it's like 1990, but we do require that they get the DOT inspections at least 4 times a year on all of our trucks. So as long as it passes for Peterbilt, and the guy maintained it, and it was like a 92 or something. Yeah, as long as it passes and it's in great working order, we'll lease it on.
And there are some incentives out there to get newer trucks or trade in older trucks for newer trucks because of the emissions standards. I think you'll see more of that. Not just the port, but the federal government is really pushing to upgrade to the tier 4 DEF.
Actually, Emily Taylor, our environmental manager, she's going to talk today a little bit about our Clean Trip grant program that talks just about that we work with EPA to help upgrade this truck now. So we're running a little low on time with the panel, so I'm going to combine our last two questions and then we'll move into time for some more Q&A, and then we'll hear from Brian from Nunes. So can you tell us a little bit about how one gets started in the trucking industry and the training required? David, I know you mentioned that you can have some training to move some of the cargo in the terminals. So can y'all talk a little bit about how do you get started?
To become a truck driver, you need to have a CDL, so you would have to go and get training and get certified and get experience. Because we're with the owner-operators, David, I'm not sure what your criteria with the experience level, but mine is like 2 years. So, okay, because everybody's different. But you have to get your CDL, get your experience, and
I guess how do you get a CDL to Nunes truck driving school?
some people study and get it.
And do you all have recommendations on where do you get that 2 years of experience?
Well, I know in the container industry, you would have to have 2 years of experience on the road. I know that's what we require for insurance purposes. You would have to be able to work for 2 years. And age requirement is you have to be 24. And that is, you can't get the insurance.
Right. Ours is 23, and it's 2 years too, verifiable in the last 5. There's other trucking companies out there that are less, that are 1 year. But most of our drivers that I've seen recently have come from like the cement companies. They work for different van carriers, even like Budweiser and stuff like that. As long as you have proof, you get, and I think that the requirements will be, there's such a shortage right now. I think that our requirements, I see it coming, that it is going to be decreasing. I think that we will be truckers that will be doing maybe 1 year experience, but you can pull almost anything that has a van, make sure that it is a tractor trailer experience is what we need. Not the box carriers or dump trucks, those don't count. But there's opportunity.
Yeah, I think the big regional carriers or national carriers are all hiring. And so if you come out of driving school and you have the CDL and you want to get the 2 years experience, my suggestion would be to get on with one of the big trucking companies that's going to provide you with the benefits, the training, and really the name recognition. So if you show up and you've been
drivers is really essential workers. They should be paid such as that, and it's happening. So it's coming, it's the future.
One thing in the U.S. we had so much manufacturing that's moved offshore over the last, say, 20, 30 years. That doesn't mean the trucking job has been lost. The plant in Chicago that used to make roofing shingle, and now that's somewhere overseas, and it's still coming in a container. So instead of moving from a plant to a distribution center, it moves from a port to a distribution center. So the trucking job is secure because the goods still have to get moved. And so I think that's something to think about too. It's not like you can just outsource it. We still got to move. And if you notice at the grocery lately, there's a lack of stuff on the shelves. That is not necessarily because it's not being made. It's just there's a lack of trucking. So even Walmart, they're really clean. They have a lack of truckers. So good opportunity. We all realize how vital it is. It's essential work.
All right, well, thank you all so much for your insight today. So I wanted to open it up to the audience if y'all have any more questions for our panelists. Yes, Brian?
So, what type of certifications, especially working for, what kind of certifications do you recommend for truck drivers?
The TWIC. The main one is the TWIC, to be able to get in and out.
Because I would suggest getting, there's the other endorsements for liquid hazmat and liquid bulk. You can get hazardous endorsed. I don't think it's that hard. It's just an extra.
Some people make it some trucking companies have that as a requirement too. That you have to have the endorsement, the hazmat.
Awareness and operations?
Right. It's mostly an awareness. So you know if you see a placard on a container, then you know what that means. And if you have an incident, what do you do? And then liquid bulk. So nowadays, a lot of containers are moving with a bladder bag inside of it that holds liquid. So like you can move wine, but if the whole container, instead of being like cases of wine, is one giant bladder that's in there, and when it goes to wherever it's going, they just suck it out. So because of the liquid moving back and forth, there's an extra certification so you understand. If you brake really hard, there's a wave coming, it's sort of certified for that. The other thing I would encourage is the National Safety Council has a defensive driving course for truck drivers. We make sure we recommend it's defensive driving, and it's just a mindset that you bring into the vehicle every day about driving defensively that I think is important. You see the signs everywhere with the lawyers. Big rig, big check, all of that. That has had a dramatic effect on our industry in terms of cost. It's been astounding what the insurance rates in Louisiana in particular have done because of all the lawsuits. And so I would say that as a driver, you're a professional driver, you have to realize there are people out there trying to take advantage of that. And so that defensive driving is a way we found to put kind of a different thinking process in every day is just know that every minute you look at all your mirrors and you're in constant surveillance of your surroundings and you're prepared ahead of time for what that guy's going to do in addition to what you have to do. And it's just a mindset really. But it's great. I take it the course and you think about stuff you wouldn't normally think about.
The certification is done,
And my company does, we pay extra for each time they pull an hazmat.
Yeah, definitely. Hazardous in particular.
Some companies, I don't think they do, but we do, so, yeah, you do. yourself have the PPE just in case you need it. Some people, whether it's your shoes, you have to have them covered, and everywhere have the safety jackets and still do the mask and support, but yeah, have the PPE.
What should be depends on the unit you're going to.
You never know where you're gonna go to change the rules. Be ready, be prepared.
Does any of them do like international, like as far as like Canada or Mexico?
Containers, I would say, because of the logistical thing, the traffic wise, that would be so expensive for shippers or customers to pay. A container is actually cheaper to put it from here than probably to a rail. So like traffic normally that I've seen is like contained within a 400 to 500 radius, because shippers and customers have options. Say, I'll just put it on a rail, then ship it there, and then take it to the next level. So I've seen that the intermodal freight has been consolidated.
And I think if you're driving for a national carrier, they would have the permits to send you to Canada.
That's more domestic. I would say it's more of a domestic van, carrier, flatbed, things like that.
Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you all so much. Really appreciate y'all's insight. Great.